Hi, my name is Sam, and welcome to the channel. If you're like me and you walk into a comic book shop, or you haven't walked into a comic book shop for a really long time, and you're kind of looking around and looking at the modern comics, and you kind of think to yourself, man, these things are trash. Well, I'm here to tell you some good news that they are making comic books in the modern day age that are actually pretty decent. So let's go ahead and take a look to see what I am pulling from my pull box at the moment. Let's get into it. All right, well, I felt like it's been a couple of weeks since I stopped by the local comic book shop to pick up what's been gathering in my pull box. Felt like it might have been a good opportunity to stop in and go ahead and grab those. Show you guys what I'm pulling out of my pull box right now. Like I said in the intro, if you guys are kind of like me, you have zero interest in Marvel, DC, the big comic book companies are putting out superhero comics they're not great. However, there are a couple of books or companies that are putting out some things that may be quote unquote mainstream I take a liking to. So I felt like maybe I could show those off a little bit, like some interest in some of these books. And then as well, I did pick up a couple of back issues. It has been so long since I went in. There was a couple of, new things that were in the boxes. So I snatched them up. So without further ado, let's go ahead and look into these bad boys. All right, so this is going to be The Crow, James O'Barr. We got John Wagner and Alexander Maleev. This is going to be your typical Crow comic. Black and white, a lot of using photo reference and things like that for a lot of the drawing. You can kind of see here using some photo effects. This series, this is on issue 3. It's been a fun read so far. I would say that out of all of the Crow series that there are floating around out there, this is one of the better ones. Some of them are kind of they're not the greatest things in the world, but this is decent for what it is. Looks like we're going to be having a new mini series coming again. Yeah. The Crow, issue number 3 for Dead Time. All right, so we got Dick Tracy number 6 from Mad Cave. I'm a big fan of Dick Tracy, mainly the comic book strip stuff. This run of Dick Tracy that they have been doing, they've been trying to, as you can kind of see here, they've been trying to round it, make it more gritty. It's okay, there's nothing about it that really screams to me like, you guys need to go out and buy this right away. If you are a fan of Dick Tracy, there's some cool things that are in here, but the cartooniness of Dick Tracy, so the goofy villains and things like that, they are, for the most part, they're more grounded. Like I said, they're more realistic, so all that stuff kind of goes away. One of the things that I found that are really annoying about these, every single issue has had the same back cover. Like, you can't draw another back cover or stick an advertisement on here or something just to change it up. They all look the same. Like I said, I would probably pass on this if I were you guys. If you're like a hardcore fan of Dick Tracy, you might be able to find something here. Patra, Dark Horse Comics. This is going to be number 404. So it's just a little mini series. I think this started around September timeframe, August timeframe, and it just wrapped up. We got James Robinson, Scott Collins, Jim Campbell. It's a pretty fun read. It's hard to explain exactly, I guess, like what this would be. They tried to pitch this as like a 70s sort of back to that style of horror movie. I really wouldn't say that. This kind of reminds me of like, I don't know, like voodoo magic sort of stuff that's going on. Again, it's kind of hard to describe exactly what I would categorize this as. I wouldn't even consider this horror either, to be honest with you. I think this is just more like spiritual, I guess is the way to look at it. I'm not entirely sure. It's how they tried to pitch this book. I really don't think it really turned out that way. There are horror elements in here, but for the most part, I don't really see that myself. However, every single issue for this was great. I would recommend to pick this up. I'm assuming they are going to end up doing a trade paperback of this whenever that does end up getting released. If they do make one, I would recommend to pick up Patra. It's a fun read. Space Ghost by Dynamite. We got David Pepose and Jonathan Lau. I would say that out of all of the books that I'm going to be pulling today, this is probably the #1 recommendation that I would look at to pull. I have every single issue of this. I missed the very first issue when this series had come out, but I did end up tracking that down later on. I can't remember if it was the issue before this or if it was issue #5. There's some heavy stuff that actually happens in these books that it actually evokes some emotion out of me a little bit. Without spoiling it too much, basically some shit goes down. For lack of a better term, you know, the kids get some pretty hardcore PTSD from a situation that kind of happened. It's kind of interesting seeing, you know, kids kind of reflecting on, you know, like what they would be doing as superheroes or as sidekicks to a superhero. And kind of the repercussions of that mentally. You know, hey, we're going around and we're just beating the shit out of people, we're killing people, you name it, and we're just supposed to go about our day and just think that, oh, everything's all hunky-dory and whatnot. No, not so much. So they touch on themes like that a lot, which I really appreciate, and just the drawing and illustration in these books is insane. And it really also has a very unique style to it in terms of its coloring. I would describe it as like overexposed almost. You can kind of see what I'm talking about, but like the whites and all the bright colors, they kind of wash out over each other. It's a very unique look. I can't think of anything that I can pinpoint a comparison to for how the coloring looks. Kudos to them for that. You know what it reminds me of? The coloring in this? It's like the color treatment J.J. Abrams uses on the newer Star Trek movies, kind of that overexposed or lens flare sort of look, because there's lens flares and stuff that happen in this comic book. Oh, wow, literally there's one right here. You can see it at the top. See what I mean? So there's like weird things like that are happening. I guess visually, those Star Trek movies, that is the best point of comparison I can get to. Like I said, these Space Ghost issues are fantastic, and if you don't already have these, I would recommend to go grab them. There was a trade paperback that came out for the first 6 issues, but it did come out in November. But nonetheless, there is a trade paperback that came out for it in November, so I would recommend to go grab that if you already don't have the single issues. Fantastic, fantastic stuff for a Space Ghost comic of all things. And while we're on the topic, Dynamite is just killing it with these licensed comics. Johnny Quest #4. So we got Joe Casey and Sebastian Perez on this, and as well Lorenzo Scaramella. The coloring in these books is awesome. A lot of pinks, lots of blues, pastel colors. The issue prior to this, there's like some motorcycle ninja, Akira kind of stuff going on, cyberpunky. It is badass. But I've pulled every single issue of this series as it's been going on. This issue in particular, nothing really crazy happens in it that I was like, oh, like, you know, I gotta get to the next issue. As you can see, it all goes down in the next issue. So this is just kind of like a story building issue of all, if anything, nothing really verbose happens in it. I just wanted to more or less show you guys that these Johnny Quest comics are amazing. The art in it's great, the coloring in it's great. Look at this. There's a lot of cool stuff happening in the licensed comic world over at Dynamite right now. All right, we're on the subject of Dynamite books. I'm also on the Powerpuff Girls pool. For the most part, they've been kind of mix matching the artists and the story people issue to issue on this. It's kind of like the same people, but they're alternating issues. All of these have been fantastic. They all have like their own individual kind of art styles to them because, you know, individual people are drawing them, giving stories to them. And one of the ones that I have beef with was this one, however. Cat Staggs is the artist on this, and at first on the cover I was like, ooh, it's kind of like has like a scratchy kind of look to it. It's a little more quote-unquote edgy looking, which would be great for, you know, a Halloween special. Once you get into this and start actually breaking it down and looking at it a little bit, it just looks like bad digital art. And I'm well aware that this was totally on purpose because I'm aware of the other work that she's done. I've seen it, but you know what I mean? So you can kind of look at this and you can kind of see it looks like it was done with a marker, and it's like the line isn't completely blacked in at all. So you can see what I mean with this stuff. Like it's intentionally bad, I'm assuming. Like, look at this. I honestly don't know. It's like, this is just bad drawing, and I don't understand how the editor even allowed this to slide. Especially stuff like this. Like, it looks like a 5-year-old drew this in Microsoft Paint. It's kind of embarrassing, to be honest with you. If this is kind of the direction that she was going for, like, hey, I want to make it look like a little kid was doing it or something, then maybe, I don't know, use a different palette, make it look like it was crayon or something. But this just comes off that she's incompetent at drawing. Take that for what you will. Out of all the Powerpuff Girls comics, like this too, you can kind of see there's like a big shift in art style. And one of the things that I took beef with this is when you look at this, it's just bad digital coloring. Like here, so you can see, you know, the light source is more or less coming down from this direction, right? You get to this panel, you have the light coming from over here, but it's shining off the top of his dome like it would be coming directly face on. And there's also a light source coming from over here. The lighting from panel to panel isn't continuous. Like, it's a kid's comic. It doesn't make like, little kids aren't going to notice. In a professional manner, you would think that you have to keep notice of the canon of what's going on in the rooms, where the lights are coming from. You know, in one panel, you drew the couch over on that wall. You have to remember in the rest of the panels, when you draw that room, that the couch sat over on that wall, because that's the way that the room was set up in the scene. So changing where the light is hitting him at all times, it's just weird as hell looking. With this too, it's like sitting on his head weird. It's not like the longer helmet like you see here. Like, it's too short, and it doesn't have the effect like it's popping up. It just looks like it's short and fat. In my opinion, that comes down to the lighting on this. Maybe if you would have moved it up a little more, it would have made more sense, and off to the side, because again, you can see here, where's that light coming from? I'm just saying. But there's some cool stuff that's still going on in here. You know, some Shining homage, the hearts on the carpet, that's fun. Unfortunately, this wasn't a good issue, the Powerpuff Girls. But with that being said, the issue number 5 and the Winter Showdown special, it's good stuff. You can kind of see that, you know, this is just more or less, you know, Craig McCracken art. It is a little bit stylized. Well, here we go. There's a Space Ghost ad. It's a little stylized, but they're really fun comics. And out of all of these that I have all of them going back to number 1. I would say that this is one of my favorite ones. I'm really into Kamen Rider, things like that. So anything that is Japanese monster-y, kaiju, Power Ranger-y, you know, that sort of deal, it's right up my alley. You know, they get into this big mech and take down a big ass monster. Right up my alley right now. So good stuff happening in Powerpuff Girls. And this is just your Christmas special. Some fun stuff also happens in here as well. So yeah, the Powerpuff Girls are dynamite. Pick them up. All right, Day of the Dead Girl through Magma Comics. I guess this is the series. This isn't anything that I'm really interested in. AJ Mendez, you know, is AJ Lee fame, WWE, wife of CM Punk. My girlfriend, I guess, wanted to get these to kind of look into them. She's Latino, so, you know, this has some Latino stuff that's going on in here. It's a pretty good illustration from what I've seen. One of the things that really bothers me with modern day comics is just the bad digital art, and especially bad digital coloring. It's like somehow we went from bad at digital coloring in the 90s, and then it got better, and then now it's like circled back around to where there's just a bunch of trash that's floating around out there again. This is digitally colored in a way that it's clearly digital, but there's enough nuance that's going on in the coloring. I think that it makes it look more natural, if that makes sense. Day of the Dead Girl. All right, so this is going to be the new Blade run through Marvel. The reason why I picked this up is because the previous 10 issues that they had done for this was awesome, and I'm kind of pissy that they stopped at the 10 issues. They had to get him roped up into the whole blood hunt event that happened. Like, who cares, right? Like, you ruined a good series that was running to have him get roped up into the Marvel Universe bullshit. This is quote unquote the polybagged version. Still haven't opened this up to read it. The first issue of this was so disappointing. Like I said, the Blade series right before this, that came out earlier this year, was fantastic. And then they're like, oh, we're gonna do a polybag Blade comic after the Blood Hunt series. It's gonna be edgy, it's gonna be, you know, red band, it's gonna be polybagged so kids can't get into it, and it's gonna be super violent. Nothing has happened in these books that I've never seen in another Blade comic before. You know what I mean? This is 100% just a gimmick with this whole polybag thing. I would probably pass on these Blade issues. All right, so this is kind of a fun enigma. So we got Ninja Cheyenne. So this was a book that was actually done back in '91. It's done from a local creator. The story behind this, he kind of breaks down in here, you know, what this is. It's something that he had done, I believe it said middle school, kind of wanted to actually put the book out. Didn't have the resources and whatnot at the time, obviously, to do that. So just as time has gone on, he kind of had just had that idea in the back of his head to finish out this book. It's fun for what it is. It was 100% free, so, you know, why not grab it and see what's going on with it? Yeah, so just a fun little local creator book. Okay, so let's now get into the back issue stuff that I grabbed out of the bins here. We got War as Hell, number 11. This is something that I've started collecting recently. I've never been really into war comics, just a little lowdown. I'm a Marine Corps veteran, so it's like war stuff, army stuff, and things like that really doesn't appeal to me. Been there, done that, you know what I mean? The reason why the War as Hell series really isn't appeal to me is the whole death character, you know, just I guess the psychological aspect of War as Hell I really like. I started grabbing these because they're just weird war stories and I can get down with that. War as Hell, 11. All right, so we got Ribbit 1 through 4 by Frank Thorne. I've seen this floating around a handful of times. It's a really cool book on the inside, to be honest with you. It reminds me a lot of Space Ghost that's going on, but I mean, come on. We got like a tank, ATV, MTV sort of thing going on here. And then we got a skateboard with clearly a Gene Simmons on the bottom. A chick with like a Men in Black looking rifle. Doesn't that thing look like the rifle from Men in Black? Yeah. This is honestly a really cool series. I just kind of picked this up on a whim. Like I said, I've known about it, but never really looked into it. It's fun stuff. There's a lot of cool drawings in here. The coloring's cool. I mean, again, how can you go wrong with this? Look at it. Ribbit, 1 through 4. Okay, so we got Space Ghost, DC number 1. I looked through this a little bit. Space Ghost isn't even in this issue. How are you going to have your first issue of Space Ghost and not even have him in here? There's some like knockoff Space Ghost that's in this at the big, like towards like middle to the end of the book where he clearly like they're setting this up that he's going to turn into Space Ghost. What are we doing here, you know? It makes no sense to me. I got into this and I'm like the biggest Space Ghost mark, and eventually we're gonna do a straight up just Space Ghost video because I have a bunch of Space Ghost stuff in my collection. This is probably the worst Space Ghost thing that I own right now. The cover is pretty cool. I like the logo a lot, but man, these inside pages, woof. Ladies and gentlemen, you already know, you see Steve Rude, you buy Steve Rude. Children of the Atom, Joe Casey, Steve Rude, and then eventually it was Joe Casey, Paul Smith. We're gonna open this up and look at it. I just wanted to show something with this comic book in particular. It's not a secret. Steve Rude's my all-time favorite. When I see Steve Rude's art jacked, I already know there's something wrong with it, just because of how well-versed I am with his art, with looking at it for so much. So we have Andrew Pepoy. I wasn't familiar with him before this. I looked him up after looking into this issue. I hate talking shit about people's art, I hate talking shit about people's careers, but stay away from inking, dude. Like, it's just not your strong suit. I've seen your cartooning, I've seen your penciling, it's good. Inking has zero dynamic to it, it's just flat. Everything is like this. It's like he just clicked on the paint fill bucket on Microsoft Paint, hit black, and just fills it in on everything. Look at this. Like, There is no seam in between the coat or the pants. No coloring lines there. Same with this. No lines. It's just straight black. Look at his suit top. It's just straight black. Like there's no, divider in between his collar and the shoulder line. When I saw this, I'm like, how do you fuck up Steve Rude's art because it's so good? You know what I mean? This is an example of how you take beautiful Steve Rude figure drawing and then you just black it all out. None of the beautiful curves that you would see in the penciling, just gone because it just gets blacked out. I sat for a good 30 minutes to an hour looking at this book and just being dumbfounded that there is inking jobs that are this bad, in quote unquote mainstream comics, like this past. And that is just crazy to me. Like here, at least, there's some variation that's going on, but still, everything is just flat black, flat black, flat black. Like there's no shading lines, there's no action lines. Like there's nothing of note that's happening here. It's not even mediocre, it's just bad. I mean, they just put in a little random, I don't even know what you want to call this, just like Spider-Man little mini series in between these issues. Got Jerry Springer down here though. Pretty funny. Can definitely see some of that Steve Rude machinery coming through there here though. Like, see, look at this. On the car, there's no shading going on underneath this. Like no inking or anything. It's just a flat. Like it's just floating in space back here. Like I said at the start of the video, we're going to be looking at some modern day comics that may not suck. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, there were books that were coming out, 20 years ago that were not great, even then. I mean, I think everybody can kind of point to 1996 as the year that comics just really took a dive. There was clearly a lot of garbage that was floating around before them, but, for the most part, though, that's where the comic book industry really took a dive. There's a lot of mediocrity. The speculator market, blew up. Yeah, when did this come out? It was like a 2000. Yeah, 99. Oof. Covers are great on it. There's a handful of good drawings that are in these books. The inking really, really killed the art in these books. Really unfortunate. All right, moving on. Got ourselves a copy of Weapon X. Got this for 25% off. First printing of the hardcover here. Can't go wrong with some good old Weapon X. I love all this like cyber stuff that happens in the background, all those lights and whatnot. It's good stuff. But we will definitely take a look at Weapon X individually at some point in time. It's one of those stories that's been beaten to the ground, so probably something I'll hold off onto for quite a while until, we get in the mood to kind of talk about Wolverine again. Might pull her out and take a look at it. But classic, classic, classic. Barry Windsor Smith. Can't go wrong. Last but not least, picked up Mad 89 from 64. So my comic book shop got in a lot of Mad pre-DC, so a lot of EC stuff. A little out of my price range right now. 20 to 38 bucks an issue. It's out of my reach, but this thing's a little beat up. It's got a couple rips, dog earring, and there's also like a postage stamp that's on the front here from whoever got this, right? Sent to him back in the day. You can't pass up a good looking Frankenstein cover and Alfred Human being on there. Can't really complain about that either. So just another Mad to kind of add into the collection. I plan on going back and snatching up some more pre-DC Mad stuff. All right, well, I think that's where we're going to wrap it up for the video. I do have more books coming. I have books coming from Japan, and I also have books coming from Fantagraphics from a Black Friday sale that they had run. So I got 2 videos in the pipeline that are going to be coming up. A Todd McFarlane art video planned, and then as well, like I said, I got the Space Ghost, I don't even know what you want to call it, just a Space Ghost retrospective, a look at the character in general, because I have a lot of Space Ghosts in my collection, different artists, you know, kind of handling him, different writers handling him, different companies publishing him. You name it. The guy's been around since the 60s, so there's a lot of Space Ghost kind of floating around out there, and I have a lot of it, so we'll take a look at some Space Ghost. These would be the 3 things for modern day comics that I would go ahead and probably pull right away out of your pull list. If you do have a pull box, let's number these here. Top 3. Space Ghost, Powerpuff Girls, Johnny Quest. Gonna be the top 3 pull list books. I would recommend that to stick on your list and start collecting them. Alright everyone, I hope you have a good rest of your day. And as always, thanks for hanging out and talking comics. See ya.